Good evening. Welcome to Left, Right and Centre. I'm Vishnu Shom. On the programme tonight, it's the season when the air quality over large parts of North India is so unhealthy that the lifespan of people, according to various studies, is being compromised big time. Every year we debate it. Every year nothing happens. Today the Supreme Court held an urgent meeting asking for immediate solutions. Were there any? What is the way forward? That's our top debate. Next on the show, this evening, crypto finance may be the way forward in terms of financial transactions of the future, but is enough being done to regulate its operation in India today? Today, a crucial meeting took place between members of the Standing Committee on Finance and industry associations and crypto experts. Is the security of investors' money assured? That's the key question that needed to be answered. But the big story that we are tracking first up on this program, it is another air emergency now in large parts of North India. The Supreme Court says, what is the immediate fix and why aren't any long-term solutions? Why haven't they been decided on at all?
The Supreme Court has said that the hue and cry over stubble burning is baseless. This is after the centre's top lawyer told the court it contributes only 10% to the air pollution in the capital. A three-judge special bench led by the CGI, while hearing Delhi student Aditya Dubey's plea seeking court monitoring of Delhi NCR pollution, said major culprits of pollution are industries, vehicles and road dust. Some part is stubble burning. Central government and NCR states should consider work from home for a week for their employees. While stubble burning is not the major cause of pollution, a lot of it is happening in Punjab and Haryana right now. We request state governments to pursue the farmers to stop the burning for a week.
Justice D.Y. Chandrachud cited the centre's affidavit which said that stubble burning contributes 4% to the PM 2.5 pollution in winter and said the cat is out of the bag, farmers are blamed needlessly, the percentage is insignificant. Justice Surikant said the hue and cry over stubble burning has no basis.
The politically sensitive issue of farmers burning paddy stubble often blamed for Delhi's air pollution crisis. In fact, there are at least 3 estimates from the government, each one different, depending on the days it's calculated for. The Solicitor General says 10% for today from Safar, CAQM says 35 to 40% currently, while the centre's affidavit says 4% in winter and 7% in the summer.
केंद्र सरकार को समझना होगा कि वो कौन सा आंकड़ा बता रही है और किस समय का आंकड़ा बता रही है। सबसे महत्वपूर्ण बात यह है कि वो आंकड़ा किस समय का है, क्योंकि किस समय अगर पराली जिस समय जल नहीं रही थी तो उस समय का आंकड़ा अलग है।
The Supreme Court also pulled up the Delhi government, saying it was passing the buck to the municipality over vacuuming roads.
The next hearing of the case will take place on Wednesday when all eyes will be on the action plan of the governments and whether it will get any easier for Delhiites to breathe. In New Delhi with Akshay Dongre and camera person Sudesh Kumar Ram, this is Sukirti Dwivedi for NDTV.
All right, so an absolutely critical situation across large parts of North India, one that's come up in the Supreme Court yet again. Joining us now, Vikas Singh, senior advocate, the former additional Solicitor General of India. He is somebody who's actually represented the petitioners in this particular case. So my question is this. There appeared to be an element of confusion in the Supreme Court today. Stubble burning of 10% was there, is as a mention in the centre's affidavit. However, the same affidavit quotes a report saying 35 to 40%. So was this, a mistake which was made in submitting this data?
Well, Vishnu, if you remember, when this migrant crisis had also happened, the Solicitor General had made a statement that there is not a single migrant labor on the streets. And that was March 29th of 2020. And that was a completely false statement. And Supreme Court accepted that statement and closed the proceedings. And they got so much of flack for that. Today again he is doing the same thing. I don't know whether he is instructed to do so or he does it on his own. But the 10% is not there, not in the affidavit at all. There is a 4% reference in the affidavit itself, which is a general reference of overall the winter quality due to stubble burning. But the report, which is the report of yesterday, where Punjab government participated, Haryana participated, Delhi government participated, and Kutti, who is the chairman of that commission, was heading that committee. They have opined that banning construction is no answer, because construction is a regular activity. Basically, it needs to be regulated. The activity which has caused the pollution now is the stubble burning, and they have actually given a figure of 35 to 40%. Now, I really don't know how can somebody miss that out and make a statement that less than 10% only is attributable to stubble burning, whereas that less than 10% figure is not there at all. So the whole purpose appears to be, and this is what I personally feel, that Punjab is coming for elections. So the idea is somehow to deflect and to ensure that the farmers don't get antagonized. But really speaking, I mean, if you want to ensure that Delhi remains pollution free, then you don't need to antagonize the farmers. You need to actually sensitize the farmers to either use this product which Delhi government has done in collaboration with Pusa Institute, which if you spray, it can, dissolve the stubble instantly, and in 15 days you get the results.
No, but now, are you now in the next hearing going to bring this up as, facts which are inaccurate? Because today's assertions in court were very strong, where they said that don't blame the farmers, don't bash the farmers, look at all the other things. I'm just trying to understand, sir, today in court, did you not object to this statistic?
So today when the hearing started, I objected in the beginning, and the judges said, all right, we'll hear you later.
I see.
And they started hearing the Solicitor General when he made this false statement. But before I could come in again, they adjourned the matter to day after tomorrow. So day after tomorrow, I'm definitely going to raise that this kind of a false statement is actually perjury. And how can somebody, a responsible law officer of the government, make such a perjurious statement? And because of that perjury today, the real remedy which has to happen for stubble burning is not happening. And when you talk of farmers bashing, I don't want to talk of farmers bashing. I feel that they have a problem, and you need to address that problem.
Sure.
And incentivize them to either use alternative means to handle the stubble, or to use this chemical which the Pusa Institute has
No, but
prepared.
Mr. Singh, what about the other issues?
You have to tackle that problem.
I understand what you're trying to say, and that will be heard possibly by the court when it resumes. I'm sure it would be. But what about the other things the court did say? That there's an urgent need to cut down on the number of cars on the road in Delhi. There is an urgent need to cut down on industrial effluents and industrial waste in the city. Questions in the past have been asked on the number of mechanical road cleaners which actually exist in the city. So it's, in as much as you can argue whatever you argue about stubble burning, what about what things that the Delhi government needs to do? I know they've done a lot, but going forward, what more do they need to do?
Well, so as far as Delhi government is concerned, when you talk of industries, if they have a proper air treatment system in place, then the treatment of the air, makes the effluent such that it doesn't cause any pollution. So they have to do that, because that's a very major cause of concern. The other is, if you will recall, Vishnu, during Diwali, in spite of a cracker ban, I mean, I saw cracker all over the city. I saw crackers being used.
Yeah, there was. I mean, the ban was just a word. Nobody followed.
Where I live at the moment, right. And so it was violated. So that needs to be checked. Then there is garbage burning. Now that's again a very, very serious issue, because garbage many a times has plastic also, and that can cause a very, very severe problem if that is burnt at places. So these are all Vishnu, which are more in the nature of implementation, where the Delhi government will have to be acting in tandem with the Delhi police and ensure that the rules which are already in place for all of these activities, they can do odd and even for the cars. They can actually, really speaking, Vishnu, they should ban the older cars from coming in completely for some time, because the older cars are the ones which do more of pollution, because the newer cars are all later norms have been
their emission norms are better.
Accordingly,
sir, I thank you so much for joining us and sharing this. But let me tell you, sir, I have this discussion every year for the last 10 odd years, and your conversation and what you're saying, if I played somebody else's statement from 10 years back, it would be the same. The point I'm trying to make is this: in the last decade, nothing has changed, sir. We come up with the same solutions, nobody implements it. And it's extremely frustrating because this has come up in the court so many times.
I agree.
And your lifespan and my lifespan is going down. And yet we keep talking about it. Implementation seems impossible.
Absolutely.
Your last thought, sir.
Absolutely. Actually, Vishnu, yesterday I started oral steroids, which I've very rarely done in Delhi. And actually, I weep whenever I start coughing, that my eyes gets moist. So that's the level of pollution in Delhi. But the pollution is, what they have done is construction. Construction is not something which is causing that kind of pollution. Construction is fugitive dust. Construction needs to be regulated. You should have more sprinklers, etc. But what Beijing has done, they should take an example from Beijing. They've spent several $1 trillion to control pollution and they've got it down. So that concerted effort is not there. And it's only when this trouble happens that every year they start
it's a knee-jerk reaction.
And I've been telling the Supreme Court since last year that please don't wait till the next crisis happens. Please take some action before. Yeah. And Justice Lokur committee, if had been there, probably this, because every political party is looking at the farmers' votes, so nobody is interested in antagonizing them, and that's a sad part of this whole pollution issue in Delhi.
All right, Mr. Vikas Singh,
man is suffering.
Hopefully
the children are suffering.
There will be some orders which will change our life from the court in the immediate period, because it just seems to get worse every time this time of the year. Thanks, sir, very much for being with us. Joining us now, Manpreet Badal, the Finance Minister of Punjab, Jasmine Shah, the spokesperson of the Aam Aadmi Party, Jyoti Pandey Lavakre joins us as well. Jyoti is an author who's been looking at the issue of air pollution very closely. Tanushree Ganguly joins us, Program Lead at the Council on Energy, Environment and Water. Mr. Badal, it is a political issue, isn't it? I mean, you can argue that no, stubble burning should not be seen as a political issue. But this close to the elections, can the Punjab government afford to antagonize farmers?
Well, thank you, Vishnu, for the opportunity to speak to your listeners. And if you will appreciate, Vishnu, throughout the year in North India, we either have westerly winds or easterly winds. So the pollution or whatever smoke is there in Delhi, it gets blown either towards Uttar Pradesh or Punjab and Haryana. You must appreciate that Delhi has the same population as Punjab, almost 2.5-3 crore people. And it's in the end of October, early November, that these winds cease to stop blowing. You know, when you have Delhi creates its own pollution. After all, you know, there's industry.
No, but what about stubble burning, sir? I mean, you heard what Vikas Singh had to say, quoting reports from yesterday saying, no, it's not 4% as was quoted in court today. In this time of the year, it was upwards of 35%. You can debate the statistics, sir, that's fine. And but the fact of the matter is Punjab needs to do something. We have this debate every year. What has the Punjab government done in the last 2 years to cut down on stubble burning?
Just give me a second. If you can just give me a second. When Punjab starts burning its paddy stubble, and so does Haryana, because high concentrations of particulate matter actually move from high density to low density. When Punjab and Haryana also become high density, there is no place for Delhi's pollution to move either east or west. And that is the affidavit which is given is actually correct. And when Delhi becomes a gas chamber. So throughout Punjab, the air quality index in all our cities is 200 AQI. Delhi is over 350. So there is something to do with Delhi's own pollution. I'm not defending Punjab. In the last 5 years, farm burning has gone down by almost a third, the area which is being burned. Can I remind you that it is the farmer's children and his cattle and his environment which get affected the most before it gets affected in Delhi.
Okay.
So we have a total of about 20 million tons of this paddy straw. In the last 5 years, 2 million is already being taken care of in various industries. We have a long way to go. Whatever it takes, we are willing to diversify, migrate to other cropping patterns, or even
so these are long-term solutions which you and I know. I mean, it's almost impossible to implement. But the collection of stubble itself and converting it into useful biomass, converting it into energy, the actual incentivization of farmers to give it to the state government to transport to a place where it can be either monetized or used productively without permission, without emissions which are unacceptable. Nothing has happened, sir. They still burn it because there is nothing, they have no option.
Vishnu, when we come to Delhi and when we come to the food ministry, they tell us that please make sure that food production should not come down. Food security is as important as national security.
No, but why is this linked to food security, sir?
If government of India
you are looking to get rid of stubble without burning it. There are technologies which are available. The Delhi government says they have technologies.
The gentleman just spoke and saying that there is some enzyme or something which you can spray and that takes care of stubble burning. Every agriculture university has actually laughed off at this proposal of Delhi.
Okay, one second, sir. One second, Mr. Badal. Jasmine Shah of the Aam Aadmi Party, spokesperson of the Aam Aadmi Party, joins us. Jasmine, that's a very strong statement from Mr. Badal. I don't want to make this a political battle. Let's talk about the science. He says that the technology developed, the Pusa Institute and Delhi government doesn't work. That's what he says. Respond to that, Jasmine.
Vishnu, let me first say that every year, and you said for the last 5 or 10 years, we've been debating air pollution, but we're not seeing a meaningful change. And that is because both the central government and many of the surrounding state governments are not using science or not looking at scientific evidence. The fact that air pollution is a regional problem, it concerns the entire North India airshed. And if we are continuing to ask only one small city state, namely Delhi, to do all the actions and expect miraculously that Delhi's air is going to change, when majority of pollution, and not just from stubble burning, there are thermal power plants, Vishnu, which are outside Delhi, which everybody knows contributes 10 to 15% throughout the year to Delhi's pollution. But at the same time, yes, Delhi government should deal with its local sources of pollution. We are not denying that. And I'm proud to say today that in the last 4 or 5 years, the kind of actions Delhi has not a single state government around Delhi has taken. Allow me just a few seconds to list them out. We have shut down all our thermal power plants, Vishnu. Not one state government around Delhi can today say that. They've not even implemented pollution abatement technology in their power plants. Our entire industry has shifted to piped natural gas. So the industrial pollution you're talking about, again, is not the ones from industries within Delhi. We have come up with this Pusa biodecomposer solution, which we are giving it free to farmers. Last year, CM Arvind Kejriwal said, let other states also give it. Let the center support other states if they're not able to fund themselves. Yet not a single other state has implemented this solution. We are transitioning our fleet to electric vehicles. Today, 7% of all vehicles sold in Delhi are EVs, which is the leading state nationally. So we are taking a lot of action. We will continue to take a lot of action. But as long as this debate is going to be ki Delhi ne kya kiya, and you're not going to ask ki Meerut, Lucknow, Kanpur have probably worse air quality than Delhi, and therefore what is the UP CM doing, what is the Haryana CM doing, and what is the Punjab CM doing? We are, for the next 20 years, we can be debating this issue. We will never find a solution.
In fact, that's an important point. Tanushree Ganguly, you want to come in on this point that, we keep talking about Delhi, when in fact the entire northern part of our country through this entire season, right from Punjab in the north to West Bengal in the east, has this haze which covers it, which results in heaven knows how many deaths every year. Because when a person dies of air pollution, the cause of death is not listed as air pollution. It's always something else.
Right. Vishnu, I think this is the most important point that we need to discuss. Every time come winter, the entire conversation around air pollution becomes Delhi-centric. Even if we look at statistics, Ballabgarh in Haryana, or Faridabad, or if you're talking about Ghaziabad in UP, they're equally or even more polluted than Delhi is. But we don't talk about these cities, even though they're very much a part of the national capital region of Delhi. The discussion comes and boils down to Delhi. The fact is that air pollution kills close to 1.7 million people across the country today. What we need to agree with is that the entire country needs a solution, which we have in the form of a national clean air program. The second bit is we need to isolate airsheds. The Indo-Gangetic plain, as you very clearly stated, is influenced by neighboring states, neighboring regions, and we need to agree to it. One point that I really want to make is that, with new scientific evidence, we should have a more nuanced and better understanding of air pollution in a region. But what seems to be happening in the case of Delhi is that we are getting all the more confused about what's polluting Delhi's air. A couple of weeks back when we were having discussions around air pollution, everybody unanimously agreed to the fact that stubble burning was indeed responsible for the spike that we were seeing. Now, suddenly the conversation has changed altogether. The problem is that we're only looking at high-level numbers. We're not really looking into what is going into putting out these results. Delhi study, which has been quoted to say 4% of pollution in Delhi is from stubble burning, it very clearly says that the study actually does not account for the October period when stubble burning is at its peak. And we also need to understand, even during the winter period, which we say, which is from the month of October to let's say early January, there is a variation in the kinds of sources which drive pollution in Delhi. So of course, in the period between 15th of October to 15th of November, it is a regional contribution, a regional influence, which is driving Delhi's pollution problem. But once we go deep into the winter, once the temperatures start lowering, it is going to be, local sources like biomass where people are using for keeping themselves warm.
So Tanushi, half a sec.
Yes.
Tanushi, I get the point you're making, lots of points. In fact, let me go across to Jyoti Pandey Lavakre. Jyoti has written, a book where she's looking at the human cost of air pollution. What is that human cost in simple terms in India, air pollution? Jyoti?
It is extremely high, Vishnu. It is like we have 500 million people on the Indo-Gangetic plain losing up to 7 years of their lives. Okay, that's again been shown in the AQLI. There's an AQLI data that shows that this is 500 million people. This is not a small number. This is not my mother, your child, my child. This is 500 million people. And for what reason? Some of them don't even know that they are dying because there is no direct correlation between air pollution and all the different diseases that it can trigger. Now, what are we doing as a country? We keep talking about this young demographic dividend that India has. What we have is a sick demographic dividend because we are setting up our youth for failure. When you have young people exposed to such severely high levels of air pollution from an extremely young age, in fact from the time before they are born in their mother's womb, what you are creating is an entirely sick 500 million people. And of those, of course, as Tanu said, 1.7 dying through the year annually, much more than COVID. Now we have a government which was able to take masterful control of COVID in the first wave through its phone calls, and you couldn't step out without a mask. You were immediately fined. So it is capable of doing all this. What is missing is the intention. What we need is we need this to be taken up at a war footing. When we have an external aggressor, we have a war room. This is an internal, invisible aggressor. It is killing our youth. It is sickening our old. It is killing all of us. We are all suffering from it, not the small short-term respiratory, eyes stinging, throats feeling awful, coughs and all. That's just an upper respiratory tract thing. What I'm talking about is the heart attacks. We have people as young as 16 years old who are suffering and dying of heart attacks. The Jayadeva Institute has done a study on that, a research study that has shown that auto rickshaw drivers and techies in Bangalore are having heart attacks which are directly linked to triggers of air pollution. We have people who are dying. We have the highest number of diabetics, we have obese people, we have cognitive harm. Air pollution affects every organ of the human body, bar none. And that is what we are doing to our citizens today. And all the politicians are doing is pointing fingers to each other. What our Prime Minister is doing is remaining silent. You can't go to COP26 and then have a country which is sickening and dying at home and you don't even address that. We have not had a single statement from the leader of the country. Forget about which party he's from. I think we need the leader of this nation to come out and say, this is a big problem. We are going to set up a war rooms type situation and we're going to collaborate and deal with it. This government has failed its farmers. Farmers have been failed by the government. The young have been failed by the government because it is only the government from the top down that can do anything.
All right. All right, Jyoti, you made lots and lots of points over there, and I feel your angst at this. We all do, and I think it's a good way of actually wrapping this debate up, because ultimately it's the human toll that we are talking about in a country where we just don't seem to value our lives enough. that we continue to have discussions despite this awful air quality around us. Thank you all very much for being with us. So as you can expect, there are lots of people writing in on coup. Here are some views. Neha Rohilla writes in and says, is this going to be every year scenario? At this stage, who knows? Vivek writes in and says, pollution is something that we need to give attention to all the time. The sad thing is that we are not doing that and only taking action when it goes to an extreme level. Well, it's time now for us to take this short break. There's more coming up on Left, Right and Centre. Welcome back to Left, Right and Centre. There's been an important meeting with leading voices of the crypto industry or the cryptocurrency regime, as it were, actually talking with the government, trying to sort out a lot of differences which exist. The government looking very closely at crypto finance as a key measure for the future. But what are some of the concerns? Well, the bottom line is this: in that crucial meeting, it was more or less agreed upon that the government cannot and should not stop crypto, but there's a need to regulate it. It was the first meeting of MPs in a big panel where they met representatives of representing crypto finance industry associations and stakeholders, because there's a lot of question marks which need to be asked on whether the security of investors was being guaranteed as far as crypto finance in India was concerned. So that security, that safety angle of the funds of investors, that was a big concern. There were concerns as well as raised by some others on many other aspects of this. Sources indicating that an MP who attended the Parliamentary Standing Committee meeting today indicated that the government is planning to bring a new bill to regulate cryptocurrencies. So there are lots of questions, and we're going to talk about a few of the problems that actually exist, which have been highlighted. Joining us, Ramesh Kailasam, CEO of India Tech; Mohammad Khan, the spokesperson of the Congress; Rajat Sethi, who is an economist and political analyst. Thank you all very much for being with us. Mr. Kailasam, one of the concerns which has been stated, and for example, let's start off with what the RBI has said. The RBI Governor Shaktikanta has said that allowing crypto means allowing misleading claims of huge returns. So let's deal with that first. Is there hype over crypto?
Well, if you look at the whole market as such and the way currently it's behaving, and this is something as India Tech, we had brought out a white paper and a proposal which we had submitted to government where we had listed out a series of concerns that needs to be addressed. But at the same time, we also made it clear that ban is not the way forward. Regulation is the way forward, because we can't be obviously potentially be robbing the opportunities that exist in this space when the whole world is taking advantage of it. And there are countries which are now stacking cryptocurrencies and so on. So one of the fundamental thing, as you rightly pointed out, our recommendation was that let's not accord it the status of a currency that takes away. And RBI is right in its own thinking that according the status of a currency would put the legal tender at risk, and at the same time the potential for misuse increases. I'm not saying that the potential for misuse doesn't exist or go away, but the potential for misuse reduces once you accorded the asset status. Now, once we have accorded the asset status, there are multiple dimensions that have to be tightened in terms of nuts and bolts, whether it is relating to the Ministry of Corporate Affairs or taxation law or FEMA or anti-terrorist kind of fund financing, or for that matter, anti-money laundering and so on, all of which can be addressed. So there are two ways to look at it. And certainly on the, and there was a talk about advertising and so on. If we do not bring regulation, the scope for fringe players increase, the scope for misuse multiplies, and therefore all the more need for a regulation, which is why we had recommended strongly that there are 15 points that need to be urgently looked at. We brought it under 5 broad regulations, and we also made it amply clear that what kind of coins should be allowed in the country, what should not be, there should be benchmarks.
Okay, Mr. Kailasam, lots of points. Let me go across to Rajat Sethi. One of the points which have been raised as a cause of concern is that unregulated markets can be avenues for money laundering and terror funding. Do we have enough internal safeguards, Rajat, in our country to prevent this from happening with crypto?
Well, I think proper crypto-centric forensics is one area which every nation is currently struggling with. Few countries, especially the US, are trying to work on it. But please understand that, of course, these larger risks are always associated with anything new, and more so with anything that has to do with finances. But what is at stake is not just a few coins here and there and a few investment-based strategies. It's much larger ecosystem. It is not just about crypto. It is about blockchain and its various other versions that are being that are very, very promising for our nation. The Web 3.0, which entails DeFi, the decentralized finance, to NFTs, to tokenizations, and all of these things. So there is this huge, humongous opportunity before our nation, which the policymakers can't turn an eye away from. They need to bring in regulations, keeping this larger impact of this space in mind before they regulate anything. So therefore, a very easy approach of going in with an outright ban was not supported by this government, and government took a very careful and a well-studied approach on this entire issue.
Okay.
There will be black sheep, and those have to be identified and punished through the laws. Our laws, whatever exists, can do only bare minimum. We need to increase the capacity of the state governments to deal with these newer age challenges.
Right.
And that requires crypto forensics. You need to get in those tools and techniques. A lot of people in this space which are not operating in the dark web are happy to assist and work alongside the government.
So this needs to be regulated in so many ways, Rajat.
Yes,
this is the point you're mentioning.
right.
Shogota Roy, the Trinamool Congress Lok Sabha MP, is also with us. He was there at this crucial meeting today. Mr. Roy, are some of your concerns or the concerns of your party with regard to blockchain and cryptocurrency, have these been addressed satisfactorily by the government?
No, actually, this was only a preliminary meeting.
Sir, you're on air, sir. Please go ahead. Yes.
We called several organizations to know the position with regard to cryptocurrency. They included the CII, the IMAI, the Indian Software Product Industry, and many independent witnesses. We wanted to know the position of the cryptocurrency, which emanates from blockchain technology, and we wanted to obtain their views. Today we are not there to reach any conclusion.
Okay. All right. So just a preliminary meeting today
what
to get
these
views.
people told us.
Yes.
No, but just a moment. But we asked what their views were. The whole industry said in one voice that please let cryptocurrencies not be blocked.
All right, let cryptocurrencies not be blocked. That's an important point.
But do not stop it.
All right. Mohammed Khan, what is the view of the Congress party?
Not be
Again,
banned altogether.
You had representatives at this meeting. Were any of the concerns addressed?
Right. Vishnu, first actually I want to answer the question that you asked Rajat about whether the government has any data on the illicit use of cryptocurrency in India. This question was actually asked and answered in Parliament in July of this year when the MOS Finance said they have no data, which makes it hard for them to make a case out for a ban. Now let's move to the second point. Now Rajat is here telling us that absolutely we must regulate, and of course this committee is meeting because they're looking towards regulation. All that is well and good. But Vishnu, this is a stark departure from January of this year. You must remember in January of this year, this government in the Lok Sabha bulletin as the business for that parliamentary session listed a bill which would ban cryptocurrency. The statement of objects and reasons said they are going to prohibit cryptocurrencies. That was never introduced. Then Nirmala Sitharaman ji gives an interview in September, not very long ago, just 2 months ago, where she says we have to be cautious. Look at what happened in El Salvador. There were protests after Bitcoin was adopted as an official currency. So she was citing that. And now the Prime Minister has said we must accelerate and move forward. And I'll tell you what the view of the Congress is. The view of the Congress is do what you must, but do it with transparency. Because, Vishnu, they even by very conservative estimates, there are 10 million Indians who have invested in cryptocurrency right now. All of these are, not all of these, many of these are very, very young people.
Okay.
And therefore, there is a very urgent need for there to be a transparency with regard to the bill.
All right, greater transparency, need of the hour.
Publish the bill.
Rajat,
and
you want to
place
respond
the
to
emphasis on educating. I just make this last point and conclude, and Rajat can respond to that as well. Any bill must place the responsibility of educating investors on these crypto exchanges.
Okay.
There's a lot of evangelism out there, but very little education.
Okay, Rajat?
I think for crypto evangelists, politicization of crypto would be the last thing on their mind. Absolutely the last thing. They absolutely don't even care about sovereign authorities, forget about political parties like the BJP or the Congress. They don't even exist for them. So I think the challenge before the nation is huge, and we need to understand it's just the government of the day which has to handle a lot of complexities, which even a lot of top-notch computer science professors also don't understand the entire gamut of this. So it's a complex subject. If you go about outrightly banning it, how can you control what's happening between two computers over the web? You cannot peep into individual computers. Look at the case that happened in Bangalore recently. It's really hard to even understand that this. No, fair enough. I think this is where a lot of industry people have been interacting with the government at various levels, at the SEBI level, at the RBI level, and even with the finance ministry. And it is for this reason that the government understood that it is really hard to go about banning something the way China did. And it is going to, right now India sits at some of the finest developers of the cryptocurrency in the whole world. We are the human resource capital of the whole world for this such a futuristic technology. Why should government of India not look at tapping into this potential?
That's absolute rhetoric.
And they are going about it, and they are constantly changing and revising their
You're trying to create a new asset class. You must consult with the people who are investing. FICCI, CII, with all due respect to them, fantastic organizations, but they represent a very small elite segment of industry.
Who should they speak to?
This is why we have a pre-legislative consultation policy, Vishnu. I'm so glad you asked. That policy, enacted in 2014, says that any bill must be put out in the public domain. So people like you and me can send in comments. There is a system whereby these comments are funneled into changes or amendments. And unfortunately, that is something that the government has followed more in the breach than in the observance. So therefore, this is the best time. Crypto is actually a good case study for the government to implement that.
All right, well, let's hope that process of implementation works out. We're out of time on this debate. I'd like to thank you all very much for being with us.